Hey Dragon Ball Super Family, I'm Legends Michael Carrick, and I'm bringing you my Xeno Shenron Mill deck profile from Team Wars this weekend at Gencon. We got first on Friday for Team Wars and third on Fridays for on Saturday for Team War. We only got third because our first round opponent didn't show up, so that was a really weak tiebreaker. But we really was undefeated until the end, where we lost to Rios' team, which is funny because we beat them yesterday and they were third on Friday while we were first, and then we just swapped places for Saturday. So it's a really fun deck to play. If you're looking for a deck to farm anything that's not green or hand control based, this is probably your deck. It's super strong into blue decks. Any kind of control deck that's not hand control, this deck is really fun to play. I'm super excited to talk about this deck. I don't know if you can tell. This deck is like the closest thing to an Invoker deck, and I've been waiting to try to find a good time to debut it since it came out, and now is just a great time because it got the most ridiculous turn 5 I've ever seen, or turn 6 and like finisher. So let's talk about this deck. It's a blocker on both sides, and both sides, the auto, after you attack with this card, stands up the leader. However, just note, if you swing on the front side, then you choose to awaken, you won't stand back up on the back side because the pending auto clears. At least that's how it was taught to me. On the front side, when you attack with this card, it's kind of weak. You have to discard a Shadow Dragon battle card from your hand, and that will let you draw one, and then, of course, the Shadow Dragon effect will kick in. It doesn't have to be Shadow Dragon battle card. It could be any Shadow Dragon card. Let me fix my face. However, that's not as valuable because then that card won't replace itself unless it's a battle card. On both sides, it has this auto where when you activate a Shadow Dragon extra card from your hand, your opponent will mill. Only difference is on the front side, you will also mill, which is actually really dangerous because you can mill your SCR. Milling anything else is irrelevant, but you have that 1 in like 43 chance to mill your SCR, and that's miserable. On the backside, it's just your opponent milling. You have your standard 4 or less awakening, or you have an alternate awakening where if there are 7 or more Black Shadow Dragon cards in your drop area, you may awaken, which is draw 1 on tap 1, which is a solid awakening, and I think is the best and most balanced awakening in this game. As a control player, I think draw 2 awakenings are the best, but this is a really good second choice to have. Like I said, on the backside, it's first auto gets upgraded to when this card attacks. You just straight draw a card now. And then you also gain 5k power, which is super relevant because you really don't want to be attacking leaders, but you do want to be clearing boards and attacking Unison. So that 20k lets you attack through Boo really happily. So let's talk about the deck real quick. We'll go right into it. Sorry, I got distracted. I couldn't tell if that was working. So we're going to go over the battle cards first because the extra cards are what makes this deck really fun. A lot of builds I see online are very battle card focused. I play this deck like a control deck. No surprise there given who I am. So I don't actually cast many battle cards. Probably this battle card is one of the only 2 I will ever cast in the deck. So Oceana Shenron Negative Energy Explosion is effectively a 2-drop counter attack. And within the counter text, you have to discard a card to play her, and then if she gets played, your opponent would have to mill the top 4, which is send the top 4 cards of their deck to the drop every time they attack subsequently. She is also a blocker, so that's relevant. She shares the auto of all the other Shadow Dragon battle cards except for the super combo, but that auto is if this card is discarded or when it's played by a Shadow Dragon, discarded by a Shadow Dragon effect or is played, you get to check the top part of your deck, and if it is a Shadow Dragon card, you get to add it to your hand. So that's really cool. She replaces herself in this deck, which is actually a really big deal because this leader actually doesn't really draw very often, especially every turn you charge, the leader actually draws a whole net 0. So that's a challenge to deal with. If you crit this deck down, it's super weak. If you hand control this deck down, it's super weak. Hence why it doesn't beat hand control at all. Its hand control options in the side deck are also super weak, so that doesn't help. But yeah, Oceanus, a big staple. One of the strongest things to do in this deck is to not play Oceanus. I know that sounds really funny, but everybody knows that this deck plays Oceanus, so they're always like prepared for it. They have to hold up some energy for a counter to Oceanus. So you want to leave up your 2 or 3 energy for Oceanus and then avoid playing it as much as you can during your turn, making your opponent's turn super awkward, and they have to play around keeping their 1 energy up. And then you just move on, right? So 1, that tells your opponent that maybe you don't even have Oceanus, and 2, it actually ruins their turn because they have to adapt to you might have an Oceanus. And the rest of your cards can actually deal with their turn very well. But yeah, that's Oceanus. We have 4 copies of the super combo. We just played this super combo because it's a turtle super combo. It's Shadow Dragon. It does not share the auto with the other battle cards in this deck where it replaces itself if it's discarded or played. So that's kind of a bummer. I never use that limit 1 to whenever I spirit boost or whatever. I just don't see the value of it. It's a Sparking 5 super combo. This leader, as you saw earlier, can awaken at higher than 4 life, so that's really relevant. That's a Sparking 5 super combo. The other card I would normally cast is Rage Shenron Power of Darkness. It's a effectively 1-drop blocker as long as you have 7 or more Shadow Dragon cards in your drop area. It comes out in rest mode, which is kind of a bummer since it is a blocker, but it shares that auto from all the other Shadow Dragon battle cards where it will replace itself or attempt to replace itself when played, which is super cool. And then just to fill up battle card space, because I needed battle cards for a couple of the cards in my deck, I played 4 copies of Nova Shenron Power of Darkness. It functions much like Oceanus in the yellow deck, where in this deck you can warp it and burst 1, and then you will go search the top 5 for a Shadow Dragon battle card. I almost never use that effect. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I used that effect. I might have never done it in my history with this card. It's really just there for a good Shadow Dragon that might have a second use in case like I'm missing a battle card negate like Oceanus or this Dolphin and I need to go find it. But it's really just there to be discarded off your leader effect or some of the other cards in this deck. And then finally, I play 3 copies of Shenron Negative Energy Explosion. This is effectively the Vegeta, SSB Vegeta from Invoker, but for this deck, you do tap all 4 to play this card, and while that's really scary, it comes with Barrier, Blocker, Double Strike, Unique, and its activate main slash battle is ridiculous. You get to Spirit Boost 1, and immediately upon Spirit Boosting, your opponent will mill the top card of their deck, and then if you choose to, you can resolve the activate battle slash main of any Shadow Dragon extra card in your hand, and then switch this card to active mode. Switch this card to active mode. So that's really strong. It's effectively a double striker, dual attack, or a double blocker. The fact that it has Barrier makes it really difficult to remove. I wouldn't play it against any color other than like red or like blue. I wouldn't play against U7 because you spend 4 energies developing and they spend 4 energy killing it while burning you for life. So that really sucks. But versus blue, it's kind of invaluable. It does speed up your mill process. Otherwise, versus other colors that do remove barrier really easily, it's just another discardable battle card that you can play. I mentioned all these discardable battle cards because Oceanus has you discard a card when on play, right? So like if you discard a battle card, they both go check and try to replace themselves. So it's really useful to have at least some version of battle cards. But none of these are actually attackers. The only attacking we're doing is with our leader to clear out Unisons or battle cards, or like draw a card. And then if we want to, we attack with our Unison to clear out other 10Ks. So moving on to what's exciting about the deck and the cool cards, we play 3 copies of this Toa Resonance of Shadow. One of the most irritating things in this deck is missing with these tutor effects off the top of your deck, so I try to limit that by playing 3 copies of her. You do want to open her on turn 1 or 2. There's also an extra card that you can open that will go find her that would not miss if you go search it. That's why we only play 3. I never had a problem missing with this card. I had it by turn 2 at the latest at any time, so that's really cool. She's a 10k, which kind of sucks. So if people commit 3 or more attacks to her on the turn she comes down, she's going to die. But luckily your leader's a blocker, so he can absorb one of those attacks if they try to commit only 2 attacks to her. And then if your leader does block, she gains a marker already, so she's actually really hard to kill. I guess so they actually need 4 attacks to clear her. And then she'll mill the top card of your deck, which is also kind of dangerous because it might, once again, like I said, mill your SCR. So that's kind of a bummer. But her +1's really strong mid to late game. It's kind of doggy-doo early game. It's just a +1 draw card, but then you have to bottom deck a card from your hand. So if you get to bottom deck your SCR, that's really good because then you know it's safely at the bottom of your deck. You can bottom deck cards that you don't need in the moment, which is a player decision. And then the second half of the effect is you get to choose up to 3 Shadow Dragon extra cards from your drop area and put it at the bottom of your deck, which is really cool because it prevents you from decking out and lets you reuse some resources. It's got this -7 that's kind of just a spook factor. I would never use it even if I did have 7 markers on this card. It lets you play like up to 7 different Shadow Dragon card characters from your drop area. And just as if you were ulting on your like yellow Shenron leader. That's actually a horrible effect in the way that I've built this deck, and you're really just abusing this card's marker plus to abuse the different spirit boost effects off your leader and your Shenron. So you ask, why would you play this one instead of like the 2-drop Bardock that actually draws you your card? And maybe you can create a hand advantage in this deck. Well, it's because there's a 1-drop card called Negative Energy Explosion that can play it out of your deck if you see it in your top 7. So this effectively lets us play 7 copies of the Unison. It's just a 1-drop searcher. It searches the top 7 of your deck to either grab a Shadow Dragon extra card or play your Unison from that 7. So that's really powerful. This card, once you have your Unison out, is very easily chargeable unless you're looking for a specific extra card from your deck. So that's pretty cool. Like I said, your mulligan is pretty much for one of these 7. If you don't see one of these 7 in your hand, you effectively mulligan the rest of it away. You don't need anything else to get this deck rolling. Then we move on to just note that every activate main / battle effect on these cards are limit 1 except for the new TP promo. We move on to 4 copies of Ultimate Whirlwind Spin. This card is really sick in the fact that it's just your activate main battle. You look at the top 5 for a battle card this time and add it to your hand. And then, of course, you may also discard a battle card after that to have your leader gain 1k power for the turn, which is like a mini bean, making all 15ks have to combo up to hit you. That's super relevant. It also helps you find your super combos in Oceanus when you need them in a pinch. I didn't mention this earlier, but your leader has the same effect as your 4-drop, where it can Spirit Boost 1 off your Unison to play a extra card, Shadow Dragon extra card for free. So oftentimes I'm using that to Spirit Boost for this effect so I can fix my hand, or for this effect so I can fix my hand for the next coming turn. These are the cards that you really want to recycle throughout your deck, since they constantly mill your opponent every time you get to activate them. You want to pretty much activate 1 on your turn and 1 on your opponent's turn, so you can constantly keep milling your opponent. 4 copies of Ultimate minus Energy Powerball. This card is ridiculous for the deck. The counter attack effect is not limit 1, but since it's a Shadow Dragon extra card, every time you activate that, your opponent has to mill a card off your leader's effect, right? It's as long as you have a Unison in play, or Black Unison, or something like that. Yeah, Black Unison in play, you can activate this card's counter skill for free, which is really cool. Its counter skill, when your opponent attacks, you can choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards with 15k power or less, ignoring barrier, and remove it and send it to its warp. So that's really cool versus Gamma, right? Because it removes both Android 17 and 18, the 3-drops. It removes nothing in Trunks, but it kind of does remove the 1-drops if they mess up, if they leave them out on the field. And you can warp those for free and get a free mill. So that's really relevant. And then versus U7, of course, it removes that Android early game when they try to use that to pressure into your Unison. That's really powerful. Additionally, it also is a 15k combo power for 1 energy. That part is limit 1, so just be careful of how you use that. But you can activate battle and just boost your leader to 30k. Of course, if you use this Ultimate Whirlwind Spin before effectively, makes your leader 31k, effectively getting you out of many powerful double strikes. So I really like that card. It's another way to calculate how many free mills you get to use, because you can reuse this card over and over. You're going to see a lot of 4s in this deck, and this is the next one. You have Ultimate Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet. Despite the ruling, which is correct for this card, this card is actually still really useful in this deck, because you get to use it as a 1-mana removal spell, especially in this format where decks are going really tall, like the 8-drop Goku or like the Vegeta SCR. They can't really attack into you because of this card, right? Especially if that's the only battle card they have. It forces your opponent to pick one of their battle cards whose energy cost is equal or less than, or who specifically, is less than the number of cards in their drop area, and then they have to warp that card. It also has a really niche effect that you can use against Strip-Coup, where when they play a Unison, you can respond with this as counterplay effect, and then they either remove markers from that Unison for every 2 cards in your drop, or send that Unison to the drop. Otherwise, they can only attack once per turn, which is brutal for them. Because their finisher is a multi-attacking Unison. It's a really cool card just to clear off the field and mill your opponent a card. And then into some of the more selective spells we play 3 copies of Ultimate Dragonquake. The 3rd copy of this card in the main deck gets sided out a lot depending on the matchup. So it's really strong versus U7 or Gamma, because they play big bombs that are beyond their energy, like Cell. Cell is never a threat versus this deck because of Ultimate Dragonquake. The U7 Goku also never a threat, because you can have between Ultimate Dragonquake and Ultimate Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet, you can remove those threats really easily. This card is significantly worse versus Trunks. It only really removes the SCR consistently. Turles is not very common to come down in that deck versus this, because they had to commit 2 energy to probably just lose to a Slaying Bullet and possibly an Ultimate Dragonquake. So this card does come out in a lot of matchups, but those matchups where cards do come down that are tall, it's very good. Versus SS4, this card comes out completely because it can't hit a single card in their deck other than Hachiyak, and that's if they don't already have 8 energy. Just things to note. I play 1 copy of Ultimate Dragon Tackle. I kind of play it just for the flex. It is one of those, all the 2-drop spells in the deck mill your opponent twice. Once for the spell, once for the leader. So that's really cool. And you can Spirit Boost them to play them for free, which is also really useful. This one's really niche. If your opponent has a Unison, they can either choose to remove 2 markers from the Unison. And then if they don't, you'll get to warp one of their battle cards and you draw a card. So most of the time people will just remove 2 markers. But it's kind of bad because it will never really truly work in your favor. But it's a cool way to like have an extra name to just mill your opponent by 2. Like I said, you can use all these cards once per turn, so you do need to have extra cards that just do the effect. Ultimate Flame Shot's the other one of sneaky card. It's like all the other 2 drops and mills your opponent for 2. And if your leader card is whatever, this thing probably, you get to crit one of your own life, and for the rest of that battle, or for the until the next time you take damage, whichever comes first, at end of the battle or end of the turn, whichever comes first, you just don't take damage again by battle. Which is really cool, so you can watch somebody dump in on their triple strike or double strike, and then you can laugh at them as you spirit boost and just crit your 1 life and stay alive. So it's a really sneaky card, and like I said, it's another mill 2. You can just crit yourself for 1 life and mill 2 of your opponent's cards, so that's a cool way to finish people off. Our next 2-drop and last 2-drop that we play is the Ultimate Ice Ray. It's effectively a Dormant Potential Unleashed. Not really. Actually, it's a bad way to say it. It's like a Nimbus or Forbidden Power. But you have to discard 2 of your Shadow Dragon cards to get that effect. The good side and the good reason or good part of this card and why we play 2 copies of this and none of the others is you don't have to do that secondary effect or meet any other conditions to get the second mill. Just by activating the card, you get to mill your opponent twice, once from the card, once from the leader, so that's really cool. And then you can choose to discard 2 Shadow Dragon cards to have your opponent only get 1 more battle card attack for the turn. So that's like one of those ways you can play around having Oceanus but not needing it. You can leave 2 energy up and your opponent can attack, and then you can just Spirit Boost into Ultimate Ice Ray, and now your opponent's really doesn't have anything to do or develop because they didn't want to spend energy. Like say they developed the 1 energy card instead of 4 because they wanted to hold up for Oceanus. So that's really cool. I probably don't want to bump this card up to 3. There was only one case where I really was like, man, I wish I had an Ultimate Ice Ray this turn. But instead I just slammed Oceanus down because I needed to, and he didn't have a counter play for it, so he just passed the turn. And that's what we want in this deck. You just want your opponent to pass the turn as much as possible. Yeah. Try to obviously discard Shadow Dragons in this deck just so that for Ultimate Ice Ray, just so that they can replace themselves and you keep your hand count up. One of the tricky things to do in this deck is charging. So as the game progresses, you actually don't want to charge your battle cards because you want to discard them to Ultimate Ice Ray or to Oceanus. You want to look to charge your extra cards, so probably like a Quake, this card, or the extra card searcher, something like that, just so that you can keep your battle cards in your hand. Also, your battle cards have combo power, your extra cards don't, so you kind of run into the invoker issue when that comes up. You can also always charge extra Unisons. And then, of course, time to talk about my favorite new card to the deck and what makes this deck so ridiculous is this new 1-drop negative energy charge. I'm actually missing another winter copy, so if somebody can hook me up with that or like help me set up a deal for that, that'd be really great. I would be forever indebted. It's got this, it's a 1-mana counter attack, negate the attack, and then do something else that's not relevant to this deck. So that's already really cool because this deck did not have a hard negate. That was an extra card. That I'm really excited about. Even when you negate with it, your opponent mills. It's got the permanent, which turns it into Shadow Dragon in all areas. That's really cool. And then it's got this really awesome Activate Main Battle. So for Activate Main Battle, you send 7 cards from your drop area to your warp, right? And then that's just the cost. That's all you have to say and do, and then ask for your opponent to respond, right? And then after they choose to respond or not, then you get to choose to either activate up to 1 Dragon Ball's negative energy overflow, something we don't play in the deck, or you can pay 4 and then play Smoky Dragon from your deck and or hand. That's super cool to me, right? So you can't even beat this with 1 God Sealing in your hand, because on 5 energy, you can tap 1 to play this card, right? Ask your opponent to respond, they God Sealing, and then you'll be like, alright, great, I choose to activate the Dragon Ball's negative energy overflow from my deck. That's crazy, I don't have it. Resolve without effect. And then you Spirit Boost 1 on your leader off your Unison to activate the second copy in your hand. Of course, since they've used God Sealing, they can no longer counterplay this card. And you still have the 4 energy up, so now they say no response because they can't. And now you activate the second effect where you tap 4 and play Smoky Dragon from your deck. They, of course, milled 1 for each one of these, and then they will warp 7 for Smoky, making it like a mill 9 plus their draw for turn. So it's a 10-card mill. It's a really great way to finish somebody off. If you just get to resolve the first one, it's even better because then you can just use the Spirit Boost for one of your mill 2 cards, and that becomes a 10-card mill or 11-card mill anyway. So that's a really cool card. I'm really happy that they made this card for this deck. I wish they made a Dragon Ball for this deck so you can actually get the effect to add a Dragon Ball to your hand. I'm sure there are other Dragon Balls in the future that are to come out that we can use in this deck. Currently, you can really only use the 4-star ball because all the other Dragon Balls require a Shenron leader. All the other good Dragon Balls require a Shenron leader. So you can use a 4-star ball as like extra combo power, but there was like no consistent way to really do that. I briefly considered playing like Kid Coup, The Adventure Begins, just to add the 4-star ball to your hand, and then you can get extra combo power, and then you can add it back to your hand every time you negate it with that. But it just really wasn't that consistent, and the Kid Coup like wasn't a better opening than playing uh, this Unison or playing the card to find the Unison. So there's that. I mean, it's still definitely worth testing. Maybe 2 Kid Coups in 1 ball or 2 Kid Coups in 2 balls. But that's something for y'all to test. And of course, our SCR is Black Smoke Dragon Eternal Evil. It costs 5 in your hand if you have 12 or more cards in your drop. Most of the time, you're going to play it off this 1 drop anyway. But in case you have it in your hand, you can bait them. They're God Sealing by Spirit Boosting on 5 energy for the 1 drop. And then, of course, if they God Sealing or do some kind of counterplay, you can just slam Smokey from your hand. So it's like a 5th copy of this 1 drop card. You can safely shove it to the bottom of your deck with your Unison. That way you know it's in your deck when you go to activate this card, so that's really cool. It's got 3 effects. Once per turn, you can choose one of the 3. The one that's really relevant to you is you'll send the top 10 of your cards of your opponent's deck to their warp, and then you'll draw 2 cards, so that's really cool. The other effects are like you can warp all of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, or you can choose 4 cards in your opponent's hand and randomly send them to the warp, which is really not as powerful for this deck. Maybe the battle card warping thing is really cool, but like to clear a field. But most of your cards clear fields anyways. If you'll notice, Smoky Dragon and the 3 Unisons are the only non-Shadow Dragon cards in this deck. So it is a very tribal deck, which is absolutely necessary for consistency. I talk about consistency in like every video I make pretty much. You just can't afford to miss with this deck since it doesn't draw very well. Some things to counteract that, I guess, would be to try the Bardock Unison because it does draw you a card. But then, of course, you can't get your Unison guarantee with that card. So just things to consider. But yeah, that's my 50 card main deck. As usual, keeping it tight to 50 cards because I'm trying to increase consistency. All right. We'll quickly go over the side deck since, of course, we did play in a best-of-1 pre-side format, even for Team Wars. We have my little Pikachu token that didn't come out at all because I don't play any token generators. We have an extra copy of Ultimate Dragon Tackle. This is just for those Unison-based decks like Drip Coup or like Green Cooler or King Cold that like to finish you off for the Unison. You can bait them with this card. You can just warp a card for free and draw a card. It's just terrible. But for those decks, they meet the condition to have a Unison out often, so you can get the mill 2 very easily. 2 copies, probably 3, of Demonic Absorption, because we absolutely cannot deal with Son Goku Annihilation, whatever the heck. That forces us to pay 1 energy for our extra cards. Even if we're trying to activate them for free, Goku adds an extra cost to those cards, so that's really bad. We do have to pay 4 to remove it, so that's really rough. It also lets us deal with Slug, another card we can't deal with, because then our battle cards don't replace themselves when they're discarded to the drop. This is like the most efficient form of battle like barrier removal I can find. Some people have considered the Vegeta that overarms for 2 black energy, but then you overarm your drop and now you do not meet the conditions for the TP anymore. So that's really important to note. 2 copies of Ghost Warriors for those pesky blue yellow mid-range decks that likes to blow you up with multiple beans. That's all this card really does is turn off bean. So just keep that in mind. 2 copies of Finn, Coercion Incarnate. These cards could easily be Kami, and they probably will be Kami after today. The intent was for them to blow up the field, or to help you clear the field. But the problem is, like, versus those decks that exist right now only usually keep, like, 3 to 4 cards. So you're really trading your 2 mana for 3 cards. I think I'd rather just put down Kami so that lets us deal with, like, Trunks better and takes out the Slug or the Goku in its place as well. Hard to say. At least Kami replaces itself. This card doesn't either. I mean, it keeps itself on the field, I guess, and it becomes a 15k attacker, but the attacker part is so irrelevant in this deck, I would consider a different card on the side. I played 1 copy to Jiren because SS4 can ramp on us. Usually we'll negate every attack SS4 has, so they never get to ramp anyway, but on the off chance they do ramp, we need to have a backup plan going into their turn 7. A lot of blue decks use Android 17 to prevent themselves from decking out. Well, we don't want to lose our hand at the same time, so we'll just Jiren in response. And it's not like they can wait till they have 12 energy to do it, because we're milling them too quickly. 2 copies of Petrification for U7 and any big bomb-like attackers. Pretty much just U7. It shuts off the Goku attack, shuts off the Vegeta attack if they're silly enough to attack into you. I really don't think a good player would attack with those anyway because you can remove those cards too easily. But the Goku does look at your hand and that can become problematic. This is also just for very niche other decks like Invoker or any like big bomb finishers. I played with a 13-card side deck on Team Wars because Robbie took my Deborahs. So I had like a Kami and I don't know, some other terrible black card in my side deck that I never used. But you should be siding some kind of hand control hate, because like I said, the deck is very weak to hand control. You could probably just give up to hand control. That'd be just as effective, but the deck already doesn't draw. So like it's not even guaranteed you'll see your Daburas, and then like if you filter and you hit a Dabura, that reduces your consistency even more because then you just miss, and now you hand controlled yourself. Um, it's really risky siding these. I don't really have a good solution versus hand control other than conceding. So if you guys come up with one, let me know what you guys think about it. But that is the full Xeno Mill deck that I played. I had a bunch of fun playing this. I'm really glad Jared and Robbie were my teammates for Team Wars because they're both incredibly good players, very skilled at what they do. We definitely could have taken both Team Wars. I should have just been better at my games, and then the last round I definitely could have helped Jared see the right line, and we could have been a two-time champion, but that's on me. Other than that, shout-outs to Team Foe, of course, for creating such a cool environment. Shout-out to the guys who traveled with me to Gencon and made that such a blast. Shout-out to all the people I got to meet and see and hang out with there. I love talking to every single one of you whenever I see you guys at events. It's super fun to get to know you and see what you guys are doing. I love seeing your decks and editing them and like giving my input. It's I just like interacting with this community. I love playing this game, so definitely come hit me up the next time you see me at an event, and I will catch y'all later.